That's it live.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another of our Lunch and Learn sessions here with Action Coach in Birmingham. I'm absolutely delighted to have Sheena Moberly with us. Hi, Sheena, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, Stephen. Thank you for having me on today.
No, it's absolutely great to have you. And Sheena, I'll come back to you in a moment for a bit more of an introduction. But just to kick things off for our listeners who are with us this lunchtime, if it's your first time with us this lunchtime, it's great to have you with us, whether you're listening to us directly on the Zoom platform, whether you're on Facebook, or whether you're on our new platform, LinkedIn. We've now got a permission to put these videos on LinkedIn as well. So welcome to you wherever you're listening to us from. Please do comment, do give us a like. If it's your return visit, maybe give us a love heart, share a bit of love this lunchtime. And also we'd love to know where you're listening to us from. We've throughout the last 12 months, really, we've been doing these lunch and learns. We've had people from all over the world tune in to Action Coach here in Birmingham, but it's always a bit fun to see where we're reaching out to this lunchtime. So please do share any of your comments, and also if you have any questions, put them in the comments box on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or in the Q&A here on Zoom. So this lunchtime we're talking all about recruitment, and Sheena is the expert. Sheena, it's great to have you with us. I'll just let you introduce yourself a bit more. Tell us a bit about yourself and your organisation, Sheena.
Right, so as you know, my name is Sheena Moberly, and I'm the MD of Taran Stevens Consulting. And we work with startups, SMEs, and those in the engineering sector in regards to the recruitment solutions, creating bespoke recruitment solutions for each of our clients. We're based in Birmingham, but we're not location specific. We do national and international recruitment as well.
Brilliant. So, yeah. It's great to have you with us. And as I said earlier on, our questions are all about, and our conversations are all about SME recruitment, Sheena. So let's kick off with the first question. And as a business at the moment, and particularly, I guess, as we're heading into following the conversations and the announcements on Saturday, just before Strictly, I think it was on Saturday afternoon, wasn't it? Saturday evening, about lockdown. You know, if an SME has just started or just about to start the process of recruitment right now, would those announcements have changed anything? And what is the first things they should be doing when looking to hire, Sheena?
I personally don't think it should affect the actual recruitment process. If you've got the need and you're still going to have the need, it shouldn't really stop you. I mean, I've sort of recruited people from the UK internationally, and I've also recruited people internationally into the UK over the many years. So for me, mentally, it shouldn't really make a difference. It's just whether or not you as an organisation can still take somebody on and are able to retain them. That's the only difference, really. But essentially, it's kind of going to the beginning of the process, actually identifying the role and the person that you're looking to take on. It does vary depending on the role. If it's a key position in your business, in terms of how flexible you need to be. But ultimately, it's kind of identifying two key elements. The first is the actual role and the technical capabilities that you need in that role. So, for example, what you want, what you need, what the essential elements of the role, what the must-haves the individual must have to carry out the duties, and what are the sort of desirables, what are the bonuses where they don't need to have, but it would be good to have. And then the second part is personality. What sort of personality does the individual need to have? What sort of cultural fit do they need to have that would fit into your business and your values? And it's just, I suppose, being aware of those, of your business values, and what it helps with, because obviously, they are going to be a lot of people in the market now, unfortunately, and just kind of identifying and being thorough with that process helps you in a situation where you've got an influx of CVs. It helps you identify within this sort of sifting process to help you identify what capabilities you need, to kind of having it at the back of your mind to kind of help with that. And then on the flip side, if it's, if you're still fortunate to still be busy and be in a market where actually there is a candidate shortage, it just helps you be, again, more open-minded and flexible in regards to what to look for in a candidate CV. And just kind of having in the back of your mind where actually somebody may not have the complete technical capabilities to do the job, but if they've got the personality and the work ethic and the values, you're still able to teach them, because you can't teach work ethic and you can't teach values and personality. They either have that or not. But don't eliminate people just because they don't have the capabilities, because you can teach those as long as they've got the right values. So
It
yeah.
reminds me of a phrase I used to say when I worked in the public sector, Sheena, hire on behaviors, not on ability, because you can teach the ability, you can teach the skill, you can't teach somebody behaviors. You can, well, maybe over a longer period of time, but it takes a lot more hard work and a much bigger investment. So make sure that plays a key part. We've got lots of questions coming in. It's obviously a very popular subject this lunchtime, Sheena. Paul is just saying, is there an ideal timeline for recruitment?
In terms of the recruitment process, I'll take it as though the recruitment process. I'll be honest, it depends on the role. It depends if it's where that individual is going to sit into your business, but it could take a month. Realistically, it could take 2-3 months, depending on the role. I think fundamentally, it's about the process. There is a lot of people available, and people can often be quick in hiring. Just follow the process. I'm not a massive fan of quick hires, because it just means you're not following the process very well. There's a process there for a reason, and it works. If you follow it, the timeline should take care of itself. Obviously, it depends if the individual you're hiring is immediately available, or actually that they're on a notice. With sort of high exec roles, people will still be on three-month notice. Some will even be on 6 months notice. It just depends on the circumstance and the individual, but usually about a month at least.
I was just about to make the same point to Paul, actually. The one thing many people seem to often forget is that notice period. And I know it can be negotiable, but depending on the level, you're absolutely right, between 1 and 3 months. And people often forget to factor that in, don't they, in their recruitment and their timescales.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it depends if it's a permanent role or a contract role. A contract role will traditionally move faster and a lot quicker, because literally you take on a contract to come in and do the job. As a permanent role, you're thinking about the longevity of it, the retention of the individual for a longer period of time. So the process is more thorough than it would be on a contract basis. So it depends.
And something we often say here at Action Coach, we talk a lot about planning, and we will be, I'm sure, over the next few weeks, Sheena, as organizations, plan how they're going to move things forward and pivot. And we always say to have a longer term vision of your organization, because when you're recruiting, you need to be able to talk about that plan to your potential candidates, talk about the vision and the mission of the organization, how that's going to be going forwards. But that sort of takes me on to another question from Sarah here. And she's asking, in terms of the difference, excuse me, frog in my throat, the difference between a job advert and a job description. And I guess, I would add to that also a person spec. That's the one I often find people get mixed up, is a job description and a person spec. But you've got the 3 documents there, or three different aspects of recruitment. Can you just sort of guide us through each of those and the importance or necessity of each of those, Sheena?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the personal spec comes from when you identify what it is, what kind of person you're looking to take on. But I'll come back to that. But essentially, it's about having the job advert and the job description. So a job description is where you're telling the individual what the role entails. So what the role is, what the duties, what the expectations are, a bit about the company. It literally is that, and that's what you give to the candidate once you've gone through that first process. A job advert is what you put out directly, on the job adverts as a marketing tool to attract candidates. So on there, you should essentially tell your story, talk about the business values, a bit about the role, but what kind of person that would suit the role in terms of the personality, the values, the benefits, and a call to action as well. And one thing I always tell employers is to talk about the employer value proposition in the advert as well, because essentially what you're trying to do with an advert is attract the action, tells you what it literally is, what it says on the tin. It's a description of the job. So in regards to the personal spec, again, it just kind of identifies and a bit about the individual. And again, if you put a bit about your values, talk about your employer value, what the individual would be good for them to have, it starts attracting people that align to your values, which ultimately helps with the recruitment process and the success of the hire as well.
I was reading a great book a few months ago called The Purpose Revolution. I don't know if you've read that one.
No, I can't say I
The author's
have.
just slipped my mind at the moment. And it talked about the changing people's ideals and purpose in
Yeah,
terms of what they want out of life, and how, particularly, dare I say, at 43, the younger generation who are coming into the workforce now and have been in the workforce for maybe the last 10 years, how they're looking for something different, not just a job, but they're looking for an organization, as you quite rightly say, that aligns much more closely to their own personal values. That's quite a high factor. Is that fair to say? That's still the case?
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, obviously at the moment situation's different, and getting a job for a lot of people, that's paramount. We're in a pandemic at the moment, there's loads of people that are out of jobs. So as an organization, if you're taking people on, just kind of bear that in mind. And actually, if you can offer somebody support of taking them on board because of the current situation, then do it. But one of the things you kind of talked about was, normally as a business, you would have a five-year plan, 3-year plan, work back, 2-year plan, 12-month plan. I think at the moment, it's just, well, what do you envisage for the next 12 months, and work back, what does that look like? And if it's growing your business, you'd rather have somebody that's there to help you grow your business, whether or not it's for 6 months and 12 months. And I think the situation that we are in, a pandemic, yes, it's about the longevity, but it's also supporting, I don't know, it's the nice side of me where you still want to support somebody. And if you can give them a job, even if it's for a short period of time, why not?
And just going back to, I absolutely agree, and just going back to the employer value proposition, it just, again, reminds me of the importance for every SME. It's something they often skip over, but to have a clear understanding of what the culture of the organization is like, to have your points of culture drafted and written down, that they should flow through into your job description, your job advert, so people get to know a bit about not just the job, but the organization they might potentially want to join. And so having that as an organization, it's often, I find, with small businesses, something they haven't always got in place, but you've just highlighted the importance of it. When you come to recruit and grow your business, people need to know what you stand for and what that business is all about.
Absolutely. And and the thing is, you'd be surprised how many people don't talk about the employer value proposition. I just sort of finished a campaign with a client, and they'd been looking for somebody for about 3 months. Went to direct hire, weren't successful. I looked at the job description they put out, and it was literally the job. And it was like, where are you talking about you? Where's whoever's reading the advert, you're not selling yourself. Where is your employer value proposition? Well, I don't know what that is. So we went through that process, but ultimately, again, in terms of layman terms, it makes you good. What are your values? Why would somebody want to work for you? A lot of companies kind of get stuck on the mindset of candidates need to sell to them. Well, actually, as a business, you also need to sell to the candidates. And it's selling your EVP, telling them about your values, your environment, your culture. And in doing that, you'll start attracting those that align with your values. And kind of going back to the point which I kind of missed that you made, was a lot more people are they don't want to jump from job to job to job. It's not just about the job. It's about people wanting work-life balance and working in organizations which, are a bit more humane, and kind of know that probably going somewhere with that, but also in the way the organization works. If you start talking about your EVP, you start attracting the right kind of people that value to that. And then ultimately, you're helping to attract the right kind of people. And it also helps with not only a successful hire, but the longevity of the hire as well. So if you've got somebody that is aware of your values and how you work, and theirs, I suppose there's more of a connection there, and therefore in terms of retaining that particular candidate for at least 12 months, if that, there's a stronger likelihood that they'll stay for a lot longer as well, because they also buy into your values. So EPV is really important.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Sheena, it's your area of expertise, but I guess, is it a way also for organizations through that EVP to sort of subtly share their unique, what their USP is, what their unique selling point is, what differentiates one estate agent from another? If you're looking to, to recruit, or you're looking to join an estate agency, why would you work for one over another? That USP and that EVP might just be the tipping point for you putting an application or not.
Absolutely. And to be fair, it's probably more paramount than it's ever been before, because everything is done via Zoom now, it's all electronic. So whilst before you kind of go meet somebody and get that sort of personal feeling face to face, and just get that feeling, you're not going to get that, or you're not always going to get that now. So actually, if you've got 3 applications and I'm sorry, if you've got 3 job adverts, you're more likely to feel a connection with the one that relates to your values. A job spec and a job advert's not just a piece of paper. It's a job. It's going to make a difference to your business, and it's going to make a difference to the individual's life. So you just want to, I suppose, create as many connections as possible. And the EVP does that.
And the other word that's springing to the front of my mind when we're talking about this is also about credibility. Organizations' credibility, a bit about the history, but also the values of the organization. Again, will attract, I'm presuming, more applications. But Sheena, I just want to take you back to a comment you made a little while ago. You said about taking on hiring too quickly. You weren't in favor of it. So what is your take? And do you want to just expand a bit what you mean by hiring too quickly, and why you have that view? That'd be really interesting to know.
Well, hiring too quickly, it's different if you're taking somebody on a permanent basis, or if you're taking somebody on a contract basis. On a contract basis, essentially, the process is a lot shorter. But when you're taking somebody on a permanent basis, more often than not, a lot of organizations, especially when they recruit directly, do tend to take on people really quickly because they're managing the process. They think it's just about writing an advert, put it on a job board, crossing your fingers, speaking to as many people, and just kind of, I've got a great feeling, and it is what it is, and you kind of take somebody on. But actually, the hiring process doesn't just finish when they start. It carries on, most probably even for the whole year, because when you look at the success of a hire, it's not just somebody started, it's, well, how long have they actually stayed with you? So the actual recruitment process, you do have to, especially if you're doing it directly, you do need to put in effort, you do need to invest time in it, and you do need to focus. There is a process. Each element of the process has an important job. If you go via an agency, make sure you value the process with the agency, but also make sure that the agency is being thorough with the process with you as well. And then obviously if you recruit directly, again, be thorough with the process. Don't just skip a load of the phases just to take somebody on, because that then could result in a bad hire, which would then have consequences, and then you'd be back to square one. So just invest time and go through it properly.
Brilliant. I've got a question from Sandeep, Sheena. I think she may have seen this picture of my slides here. So she says she's recruiting at the moment. She's got 110 CVs. Any tips for sifting through those in the right way, I think is what she's.
Yes. When it comes to.
Is it right in the wrong way?
Well, yes and no. I think it's kind of going back. Obviously, it's physically impossible to speak to 103 people. However, when it was, sorry, Sandeep, I once had a situation where for a client, I kind of went in as an internal recruiter and recruited for a graduate. This was just before the pandemic, and we had 160 applications. But ultimately, it's doing a number of sifts and kind of, again, identifying what do you want, what do you need, what's essential, what's a bonus, and using that as a criteria. I'm hoping if you've had that many applications, you would hopefully have had an application form that you could have possibly put some questions out on to help eliminate those. But I'd look at your screening process, so the sort of prerequisites for the job, and start eliminating people that way. But also be mindful that, people have applied. So obviously it would be good to get in contact with people and give feedback. I appreciate sometimes it's not possible to give feedback to so many people, but again, if the shoe was on the other foot and you'd applied to a job, it's just the nice thing to do to get back to them. It's to whether or not they're successful or not. If there's any feedback you could give, then please do. But again, it's about investing and then doing that initial process. And then when you've sort of got them down to a certain level, I actually do call a lot of people, because it's just that I feel bad rejecting people just like that. So I will call most people and have that first initial conversation with them. Normally do about 20 or 30. With the project that I did, it was 160. I probably spoke to about 50 people with that, and then narrowed it down even further and even further. it's just the way it is. But if you're recruiting directly, think about your employer branding, and just get back to people, especially during these crazy times.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Sheena. Just highlights also the importance of perhaps having a structure, as you said, know what you're recruiting for, and perhaps having some sort of a scoring system. I don't know, I've worked in organizations where that has worked. I've worked in other organizations where that's not been the case, but I guess finding a system that works for you, is that fair to say, Sheena?
It is. And to be honest, it depends on the role. For example, again, without knowing much of the role, do they have, is it a key role? Are they going to have to come into the office, or actually can they work, long distance online? And is it something that can continue? In which case you can't really take location. If people have actually put an effort to actually put in a covering letter as well, that gives you more insight. But it's just one of those, you have to have a bit of a screening tick list for yourself and kind of go through it, but just make sure that the ones that haven't got through it, you do get back to them. Again, it's not easy, and no one said it's quick. If you recruit directly, there is a process, and you do need to follow it. So there are advantages and disadvantages of recruiting directly and going via agency, and recruiting directly does take a lot of time, and that's one of the reasons. You get other applications.
Sheena, just in your response, and there's just one thing I just want to pick up on in terms of the working from home, working remotely versus working in office. Should that be covered off or how should that be covered off in any job advert?
What do you mean in terms of it? Well,
does that need to be addressed separately, or is it the case of the job is normally in the office, but given current guidelines, you may well be working from home? Does that need to be addressed in any way?
Yeah, no. I mean, if the more information you put on a job advert, the better. So actually, if the job can be worked remotely, then put it out there. As in, yes, this is a remote work. If it's a flexible opportunity, put it down as a flexible opportunity. If it's actually at the moment you'll be working remotely, but in the future you'll be required to work in the office, then again, the more information that you give people to assess that role and make a decision as to whether or not they want to apply, the better. So I'll definitely put it down there. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sheena. I've got another question here. This is from Jags. Jags is saying, you've mentioned several times recruiting directly and indirectly. What are the advantages and disadvantages? Do you want to cover that off, Sheena, in terms of outsourcing and doing it directly?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously when you recruit directly, it's about your employer branding. The advantages of that are you're putting your brand out to market, and if you've got an internal recruiter that comes in, they're representing you, and you're fundamentally in control of the process. You're selling your business, you're marketing out your business. So employer branding comes into it a lot, and you're getting it out there. The downside of it is it takes a lot of time. And you have to be a lot more hands-on when doing so. But obviously, you're then not paying the larger fees as you would if you sort of outsource that. If you go via an agency, again, they pretty much take care for most of the work for you. So if time's of the essence, then that might be the best way for you to go. But ultimately, I think it's just looking at the role at the moment. Again, project I've just finished, the client had traditionally gone to agencies for that. But because the current state of the market, it was a case of you don't need to, and you don't need to pay those fees. So I went in as an internal recruiter, and we sort of took care of that. So took care of the advertising. The client did turn around and say, actually, Sheena, I'm having to be involved quite a lot. But when you're recruiting directly, it's time that takes up most of the time, really.
Yes, yeah. As I think Sandeep saying earlier on, she's got 110 CVs. That's the sort of thing that initial screening, I guess, can be outsourced. It's a huge amount of time required. Yeah.
And to be fair, there are organisations. I mean, we do it, but there are organisations where you can outsource certain elements of the process. It's just finding the right one that represents you in the right way and understands your business, so that they're taking care of the candidate experience on behalf of you, but doing it the right way. So, but yeah.
I know there's an awful lot of agencies out there, Sheena. When selecting the right agency to outsource, if you're going to go that direction, what should business owners, small SME business owners, be looking for when choosing their agency?
I think when you say, let's be honest, in terms of agencies, there isn't always a positive. What's the word I'm looking for? There is a lot of negativity when it comes to agencies and agency workers, but there's good and bad in every trade. There's some amazing recruiters out there and some amazing agencies out there. And on the flip side, there's some terrible ones out there that give a lot of us a bad rep. But people buy from people. And it's if anybody can refer you to an agency, then go by it that way. And if you don't, then have conversations, invest that little bit of time of getting to know the individual that you'll be dealing with, because, you can go get recommended to a particular agency, but it depends on the individual that you're dealing with and their capabilities and, whether or not they're competent in doing what they're doing and whether or not they can actually represent you and get you what you want as well. So I'd always have a conversation with the recruiters and kind of suss them out that way, and see if you can build a rapport and see if they understand you and your values as well. But I just wouldn't go with the first agency that you kind of pick up the phone to and hope for the best and fingers crossed, because it doesn't always happen. Like I said, there's good and bad in every trade. So
brilliant. And Sheena, most people, many people may think, or may assume that recruitment stops at the point in which you found your candidate and you've agreed, to take somebody on. But it, as you know, and I know, that's really only halfway through the processes and the onboarding and sort of the induction, etc. Why is that so important, and what should people be thinking about in those first 3 months of anyone starting with an organisation?
Well, the first 3 months are critical, and they're going to help define as to how successful that candidate's going to be. Usually the first 3 months of anyone starting, it's that kind of honeymoon period. Everyone's nice. Candidate may not be sure what the process is, or if this is how it's done, or maybe it's just how it's done with them because it's under the pandemic. The first 3 months of the onboarding process are really, really paramount. You do get a lot of people that have 6 month probations. It's usually because months 4 and 5 is when people start coming out their shells and start finding out more information. But actually, if you can start that from the very beginning and just kind of checking in on people, and again, some agencies do that, we do that, we'll kind of do the onboarding, and it's just having somebody that kind of checks in with the candidate, but also checks in with the client. Again, HR do this as well, or some HR that I know do this as well. Not all businesses will. It's kind of often forgotten because you've got somebody start and you kind of get caught up in the whole of the induction process. But it's the kind of the onboarding process that's really important as well, to kind of check in on both parties, just to kind of see how they're getting on, if everything's okay. I've had situations where candidates have started with a great business, but the business owner's communication style wasn't great. And whilst giving me feedback, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, they're doing a great job." I'd be like, "Have you actually told your starters?" And he'll be like, "Well, no." And it's like, well, why not? Having that regular feedback of, yes, you're doing a good job, or this or this or this, can just help eliminate little niggles, which, if not eliminated, could then build up into bigger niggles and probably explode. So the 3 months are really paramount for businesses to kind of take care of both the parties. So yeah.
You just give me an ideal opportunity to make a shameless plug, Sheena. Here at Action Coach, we have a service called Engagement Multiplier, which is a great anonymous tool that organizations can use to get feedback, not just from their new employees, but from their employees across the board, to understand what some of those challenges, whether things are going well and where things are perhaps could be tweaked and changed to engage and support employees more. Internal communication is so important in any organization. So if anybody's interested in finding out more about Engagement Multiplier here at Action Coach, please do get in touch, and we'd love to have a conversation and show you how it works. But going back to the question, so the first few months, it is, and just on the probation point there, Sheena, is 6 months an ideal probation period? Is it? I guess you're going to say it depends on the job, I'm sure, but
I don't know. Normally when I work with organizations, 6 months is the norm anyway. I don't really know, especially the ones that I've worked with that are less than 6 months, but I'd say 6 months should be the norm, because just, I suppose that kind of curve that exists when people start. Like I said, you've got the honeymoon period, and then people start, coming out of their shells, month 4, 5, and then 6 months in, when you get to your 6-month probation, that's when you start having those conversations of ifs and buts and whys. And it's like, well, actually, if you can start that earlier on, that would be great. But yeah, 6-month probation seems to be the norm.
Right. Brilliant. And we've just talked about those first few months and, the probation period. We're obviously going into a period of lockdown, and we've been in a strange year, as you and I both know, Sheena, and everyone listening knows. 2020, I think, is a year that we're all looking forward to saying goodbye to, and looking forward to 2021. But I'm down here working from home in Kent. I'm not missing the M25 and the M6, that's for sure, but I do miss working with my colleagues and seeing people face to face. And we have got colleagues we've taken on here in Action Coach during that lockdown period and during that remote working period. What do we need to think of when inducting people and bringing people into an organization where most of the colleagues, if not all of the colleagues, may well be dispersed? We may well have certain teams, if not everyone, working remotely. What are your thoughts and any ideas around that, and what can we be doing to make that a better process?
I think it's just kind of being a bit more mindful. If the shoe was on the other foot, how would you feel? Some of the great tools that I've been sort of, I suppose, working with my clients with is doing a lot more on Teams or even Zoom. We've got the technology, so use it to your advantage. Teams is a great tool. You can even use Zoom. So I'd probably say sort of, when the individual first starts on the first day, go through their job roles, go through their duties, go through expectations again. I know some clients have actually even done an admin pack that they kind of send to them, which they probably wouldn't normally have done under, not normal circumstances, because it's normal, but before pandemic, that's kind of what they've done. And actually in the pandemic, it's kind of going over and above in a way, just to kind of make sure everything's still fine and happy. And they've done sort of little packs. Other things that you could do is actually, especially if the business is large and you've got lots of people to kind of connect with, actually diarize meetings for the individual for the first few weeks, and even for the first month, so they know what's happening when it's happening, so they're not having to make those calls to people they don't know because they haven't met, because of current circumstances. Those are already booked in for them, and the expectations of the people in the business know that they're going to be having a chat. I'll also diarize meetings with stakeholders as well, so kind of taking some of those processes away from them and kind of organizing their diary a little bit more in the first few months in terms of the induction. So you're kind of just helping them out, because it's all over, technology. Other ways are buddying them up with somebody as well, because whilst the sort of work process can be done, it's kind of also trying to build a bit of rapport from the individual and making them feel comfortable just from, I suppose, the human aspect as well. So if you can buddy them up with somebody, do so. And another one, which I suppose normal circumstances, you wouldn't be doing this, but now it's probably more paramount, is just checking in on them, especially the first few weeks. Check in on them, have a 5-minute conversation with them or 10-minute conversation with them at the end of each day. How are you getting on? How are you doing? Reflecting on it on the day, any issues that may have arisen that you could probably talk about. But just kind of, being a little bit more human and empathetic with the situation the way it is, but just being more organised for them. So yeah.
And I've got more questions coming in, Sheena, if that's all right. We've got a bit more time yet to go. Jag, again, it's just picking up on a point that you've made, and good that people are listening very clearly to what we're saying this afternoon. It's great to have some interaction, as always. Jags is just saying, Sheena, any tips for interviewing over Zoom? It's obviously going to be quite a new way of working for many people anyway, but interviewing potential candidates. And are there any other recruitment tools you recommend alongside that to help to get to know the candidates better? So there's 2 questions in one there, aren't there, really?
Right, okay, so we've got interviewing and we've got, what was the other one, sorry?
Any other tools to help to get to know the candidate?
Okay, so well, in terms of interviewing, the ones that I've been sort of really recommending, it's just kind of be a bit more thorough and more set out, because often now with Zoom, people are a lot more relaxed, and there's a lot of chit chat that goes on, but you don't actually get to, I suppose, the fundamental part of the interview. So as the interviewer, just make sure you take some time to write down the questions that you definitely need to ask. If it's a technical role, then what sort of technical questions do you need to ask to get down to identify the candidate's skills, but also have some competency-based questions as well. So have that already before you kind of go into the interview. Because like I said, a lot of chit chat kind of happens and it's great, and then you kind of come off it. And I know my clients are a lot more emotionally involved, and I'll be on the phone, so how'd it go? Oh, it's great. Okay, but did you find out about this? Oh no, we just got carried away, because everyone is so much more relaxed, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of being a bit mindful about what you need to get from it. But also give the candidate some time to actually ask questions as well, still do that. And if anything, I'd probably add another process into it as well. I'll probably add another interview stage into it, because this is so different and the conversation doesn't always flow the same way. Both parties come off it and it will be like, which you often do, I guess, but probably more so now, is have more questions. So whilst normally it may be a 1 interview process, have a 2 interview process. Not because, the second one needs to be an interview or more of a grilling, but it's just if there's anything else that once, that both parties reflected on stuff and digested the information, actually, if there's any more questions, you've got that opportunity to do so. And in terms of tools, again, what we lack is that human interaction with interviews. There are assessments out there that can help you. There's behavioural ones and there's trait ones. Obviously, behavioural ones you can't really use in the interview process to sort of make judgments, but there are a lot of trait ones out there that allow you to do that. But again, it will just help you sort of identify, and just, it's not the be all and end all, but again, it's just another tool that you can use to help you in the assessment process in regards to the individual. And like I said, the behavioural ones are good because, if you are looking to take somebody on, when they do start, it will help you to, I suppose, see whether or not they'd fit into the team or how they'd interact with other individuals in the team, but also as a leader, how you need to adapt your communication style to suit that individual as well.
Yeah, we do a lot of work here at Action Coach using a system called DISC, which just helps to understand how teams can work really well together. And it's more about traits, as you say, than behaviors.
Yeah.
And understanding people's communication preferences and styles. And that can really help in terms of, if you've got a team of perhaps one dominated by one style and you need somebody to come in with a different style, helping to understand that sort of thing before or as part of the interview process can be really helpful, can't it?
Yeah. So the traits one is the one that you're looking for. That will help you for the actual interview process itself. Yeah.
So Paul's just come back on our question about Zoom interviews and just said, in the current climate, is it okay to still interview in person, or should we give people the option of both? What are your thoughts, and what's your experience so far, Sheena? Have you seen a lot of interviews on Zoom? Has it been carrying a lot on in person?
Nope. All of mine have been on Zoom. I don't really, for me, this is my own opinion, I don't really see the necessity of having to do it in person. Obviously, if the job requires you to do it in person, depending on the job, there are some out there. But no, that there'd be no need. Again, I've previously recruited people internationally into the UK and vice versa, and a lot of it was over. It wasn't Zoom then; it was another IT system, which I cannot remember, but it would all be there. Candidates would kind of do the interview, but they'd also talk a little bit about themselves, their family, what they like, what they don't like, just so you can sort of help get to know the individual. But if the job doesn't, unless it's a must under this current circumstances, I wouldn't, because you don't know the other individual, like the person that is being interviewed, they may not feel comfortable to actually meet you in person because of the current situation, but they might feel compelled to do so because the job's with you and they really want the job, actually making them uncomfortable. So, I don't really know the rules. For me, all my processes are just kind of online, and just adding more tools and more processes and being a bit more thorough to get to the end result. If anything, I don't know if we'll be allowed now, but I have had a situation where a couple of them have then met the client, but it's kind of their choice. And I've kind of left it to them to do what they want and meet up. It's a personal choice. I wouldn't make it a definite must have.
Yeah, and as you say, I guess a lot of it comes down to depending on the role you're recruiting for.
Yeah.
If it's a role that they can't do from home, they need to be in the office anyway, and that's going to be clear. Perhaps that needs to be made clear as part of the process, but also then a
Yes.
meeting maybe more practical.
Absolutely. And I probably wouldn't do it initially. I'd probably do the first interview over Zoom. And then if that candidate makes it through to the second round, and again, it definitely needs to be in the office, I'd make them aware at the beginning that if it gets through to the stage is what we'll do, so that they're aware of that. So it's not a shock when it comes down to it. But yeah.
One more question for Paul says it's his last question. In terms of using Zoom, he's saying any suggestions or tips on online tasks. So if you're asking people normally when I guess what Paul's saying as well, I can think of interviews where I've asked people to perhaps do an inbox exercise or do a timed piece of work. Any ideas or thoughts on doing that over Zoom? Any experience of doing that over Zoom, Sheena?
If it's timed tasks, if you're doing it over Zoom, you can always control the process. See, I'll be honest, the stuff I've been doing, I've just letting them get on with it in their own time. If it's part of the interview process and you're testing them in the interview, then you can always share it or send them the information prior. Again, it's kind of a case-by-case basis. So, Paul, I'm really sorry. It kind of depends what you're talking about. It depends on the test. Is it necessary? If it's online, can you send it to the individual to do in their own time? And once they've finished, it's timed out and the results come through to you. It depends on the test. If it's like I said, a kind of tick box exercise that you're doing it with them, you can always share your screen and think of a bit of an outside box to kind of go through that process. But again, what the pandemic's shown us is most things you need to adapt, and it's just adapting to it. If it doesn't work for that situation, just thinking of other ways around it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sheena. So a couple of last questions from me, really, just to help you also tell us a bit more about what you do. So in terms of agents, if we're going to pick an agent, why would we come to you and your organization, Sheena? And also, is it better to go with one or more? Is it better to go with multiple agents, a single agent? And then if it was a single, why would we come to you? Tell us a bit more about you.
So I'll answer the one in regards to multiple agencies. I'm personally not a fan of when people go to multiple agents. The reason being is, as an organization, you're not showing your commitment. And again, going back to when you're picking an agent, make sure they understand what they're doing, make sure they understand the industry that you're recruiting in, and make sure you kind of trust them and have that rapport with them. Or, again, people buy from people, so get that feeling. But in terms of going to multiple agencies, often you'll get companies that will give a job out to 4, 5, 6 different agencies. And I personally don't see the point in it, because there's that kind of false sense of I'll have more people recruiting for me. Well, actually, you won't, because how much effort is the recruiter putting into your role to get you those people when they know that job's gone out to 4, 5, 6 different people? It's about working in collaboration and in partnership with an agent that's going to represent you, and you're both committing and investing time into that. So it's showing that commitment that, yeah, I'll stick with you because I know you, or I've been referred to you, or I've read your testimonials, or I believe in you. It's kind of making that judgment call. And in regards to me, why you'd work with me? Well, again, there's good and bad in every trade. And for me, it was something that I felt passionate about, creating bespoke recruitment service. Recruitment can be very black and white. It doesn't need to be black and white. It's about working with my clients and the challenges they have and creating a process that suits them. In the way that they want and working in the way they want, but it's also representing the client. For us, our values are open, trust, quality, and flexibility. And again, we work with clients that value those, that align with those values as well. Because in the day when we're working with a business, we're working with clients, but we're creating an opportunity for that business to grow. But ultimately, it's also about working with individuals to put them into organizations that we know value their staff, value their people. I think you get to a point in life where it's about doing the right thing. I've got kids. For me, it's about work-life balance. I couldn't find it, so I went and created it. I could be there for my kids, and it's about creating quality and value for businesses out there. like I said, on the flexibility side, we do internal recruitment and we do external recruitment, and it's just giving clients the option and working with them to come up with the best solution.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sheena. So I've got one more question, but before I ask that of you, just some things that I've taken away from today. So first, I think the importance of planning, to plan your recruitment process, and I think we've not really touched on it, but to make sure you do your research, I guess, to see what other similar organisations are offering, what roles are like out there, and to understand that you're pitching your vacancy at the right level and with the right terms and conditions, and selling it in the right way, I think. But also we've talked a lot about points of culture, haven't we, and understanding who you are as an organisation, especially as an SME, so that when people come to you, because I guess the interview process, I use that phrase a lot, I guess, but I know that the interview process is as much about the candidates finding out about us as the employers as it is about us finding out about the candidates. So we really need to make sure we know what we stand for, what our vision is, what our ambition for the organisation is, and particularly as a small business, to have a really tight grip on that, and really, to know your stuff, to know what your vision is for the business, and to be able to sell it concisely to the candidates in an informed way.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because ultimately you want the right candidate, but you want the right candidate that will stay. A lot of people don't do that, and they take on a bad hire, and ultimately will cost them more time and money taking on a bad hire. Well, actually, if you just did it properly from the beginning, the chances of that being more successful would be better.
And you've referred to a process being there for a reason, Sheena. I think that's the other big takeaway point. There is a process. Don't rush it. You've said it several times. Don't hire too quickly. And I would have to say, I mean, I've been in situations where I've been recruiting before, and actually we haven't hired. It's better not to hire than to hire the wrong person, because that is such a longer term, can be such an expensive exercise, can't it?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, the time, the money, the training, the time, well, in terms of recruitment process, and then when you take that individual on board, and actually damage control. Again, I've worked with clients before me where have hired through various different means, and actually it's cost one of them a lot of money because of the stuff that they said they could do and couldn't do, and it's messed them up. And then the damage control, and also the amount of work that gets lost because you're spending a lot more time trying to fix what they've messed up. So yeah.
And if you don't recruit the first time, don't just rewind and replay. Get some advice, ask yourself why it didn't work, ask yourself what you could do differently. Come and talk to somebody like yourself, Sheena.
Come and talk to someone like me, yes.
Absolutely. But my last question, this is one from me. I'm sure you have seen an awful lot of recruitment processes over the years in the time you've been doing your role. And without divulging any information, are there any sort of key wins, key tips that you can give to our listeners this lunchtime, and share any key areas of where things have perhaps gone wrong, things to avoid? What would be your top 3 tips, I guess?
Oh, I don't know. You've put me on the spot there. There's so many. Be yourself. Follow the process. Obviously, be thorough. You get a lot of people that kind of get caught up about the technical capabilities of an individual. And it's kind of like I said, you can teach skills. It's the personality and the ethos and the work ethos that you cannot teach. So, if you're in an instance where you're struggling to hire, ask yourself why. Go back to the job advert. What's fundamental? And actually, if you come across an individual who you believe in and can demonstrate good work ethics and persistence and kind of wanting to carry on and learn, you can teach them those things. How many was that? Was that 1, 2?
There's a couple there.
There's a couple.
Absolutely. And anything we should avoid? What would be the one thing to avoid, Sheena?
Oh God, I don't even know where to start, Stephen. Do you know what? I genuinely, I don't even know where to start. Avoid. I'm going to go back to it and sound like a broken record. Not following the process. Sometimes going with your gut feeling can be great, but just make sure you've got evidence to back it up at times. And again, if you're not hiring, just look at just what's going wrong. Avoid references. Always do references. I had a situation where the reference came back, it was fine, but there was, without going into too much information, it sort of rang alarm bells. And I said it to the client, and I was like, alarm bells because of X, Y, Z. And they got so caught up in the process and the emotion and the positivity. Oh no, brilliant! We were trying to recruit for management. We finally found him and took him on. Actually, it backfired. Was let go 2 months in, and it was a case of, Sheena, we should listen, and yes, you get good and bad references, but just be mindful of references. Always do your checks and always do references.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Well, just before we finish, I just want to share one more slide. I talked about this earlier on, and that is just this one here. We're all going through a really challenging time at the moment. Whether you're recruiting, whether you're the business owner, whether you're a candidate who's just, perhaps recently been made redundant, everyone is on this process of transition in a different place at this moment in time. And I think it's just really important to bear that in mind in any process we've got in our organization, whether we're recruiting, whether we're promoting internally, whether we're talking to our clients, whether we're talking to our suppliers, our existing clients. Just remember that everyone at the moment is on a different point of this transition curve. We all are going through this change in our own very personal way and dealing with it in a very individual, very personal way. And so yeah. I think it's just something to bear in mind when you're recruiting out there, and you may have somebody who you think is an absolutely ideal candidate, and they may not come across in the way you expect them to, or you may have some difficult, interesting conversations. Just bear in mind that everyone has got something else going on in the background. Everyone's got a challenging time. Everyone's dealing with this in a very different way. So I just want to mention that before we finish, Sheena, that the impact of lockdown, the impact of change is out there at the moment, and we just need to bear that in mind when recruiting and in every aspect of our business. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Everyone's fighting their own battles. It's crazy times. You don't know what their story is. You don't know where they are with their head. So just be more empathetic and just remember, everyone's human. It's not a piece of paper. CV's not a piece of paper. And just be mindful.
And I think for me that sort of just is a good reason why, maybe a two-stage interview process. If somebody looks really good on paper, doesn't come across as well in interview, just ask yourself those questions before making any final decisions on candidates and on processes. Just if there's an alarm bell ringing, then listen to that little voice in your head and ask yourself a few more questions.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
So Sheena, we've got 8 minutes left. We won't necessarily go right to the hour, but just before we do finish, if anybody's got any questions for Sheena, please do get in touch. Her contact details are on the screen. But Sheena, if somebody wants to connect with you, what's the best way, and what have you got any particular way of doing business that you want to share? Any particular offers or processes, and how would people first start that conversation with you?
Yeah, if you want to get in contact, drop me an email. Drop me an email and just kind of obviously put that sort of the Action Coach video. Let's have a conversation. We can take it from there. There's one thing I do. Well, actually, a couple of things I do. For me, it's I'm very big on mental health and well-being, and I do a lot to sort of give back to the community. We've actually been putting events on as well. So at the moment, parts of our when we work with clients, we actually have the option of if you'd like to donate some money, either going to charity or to be put towards some of these events that we're doing, which are for to help with mental health and well-being. And another one is also we work with candidates for CV writing and interview techniques as well. So again, when we work with companies, there's an option in regards to payments as to whether or not that they want to help with some of those options, and just kind of giving back to society and community, really, and having a bit of a positive social impact.
I absolutely love that, Sheena. So every time somebody comes to work with you, they're not only helping their own organization to recruit the right person, but they're also helping somebody else take that first step into recruitment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well. So, it could be in regards to helping a job, or actually just kind of making a positive difference in someone's well-being or mental health. And the charities we work with are Mind and Birmingham Children's Hospital as well. So there are options that people can choose to go, actually, I want some money to go here or here or here, just kind of have a give back. But yeah, feel free to get in contact with me on email. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn as well, and just kind of mention that you kind of saw the Action Coach, and then happy to have a conversation with anybody that sort of looking to recruit at the moment.
Brilliant. And I love there, live on this Lunch and Learn webinar, you've put into practice what we've been talking about earlier on about highlighting the values and points of culture of your organization. And there, Sheena, you've done that for us in terms of your own organization, the values and what differentiates you to other agencies out there. So thank you so much. And just before we go, I just want to share what we're doing here at Action Coach. It is a challenging time as we go into lockdown 2. It's not going to be the same as the first time. We need to use this as an opportunity to learn what we've been doing before, what we went through before. And as business owners, we need to lead our organizations forwards. And the gentleman, Brad Sugars, who set Action Coach up 30 years ago, has put 30 of his videos together, the 30X program. It's 30 years of business experience into 30 minutes of video every single day for 30 days to work on your business. So what a great opportunity right now to use this time of challenge to actually think about how can you drive your business forwards? What can you do differently? How do you need to pivot your business to make sure it doesn't just survive, but it thrives well into the future? And so we've got a special offer over the next 30 days of £30 a week to sign up. So that's 15 hours of training for £30 a week. So it's a great offer at the moment, and there's no contract. So if you want to dip your toe in the water and find out a bit more about Action Coach and about how you can grow your business, please do get in touch with us. We'd love to tell you a bit more about that and how you can support and grow your business in this challenging time. But for now, I just want to say, finally, before we finish, a huge thank you to Sheena and your colleagues at Sow & Stevens. It's great to have you with us this lunchtime. If you've been able to put questions and comments on Facebook, you're listening to this, or on LinkedIn after we've finished this live webinar, please do submit your questions either to Sheena or myself, and we'll make sure that we reach out to you afterwards. Either we'll connect via LinkedIn, via Facebook, or we'll contact you directly if you give us your contact details. We'll also put this video live onto YouTube, or also recording onto YouTube, so you can refer back to it later. If you've joined us later in the Lunch and Learn webinar and want to go back to the beginning and listen to the dulcet tones of Sheena and myself, maybe on a different lunchtime, then feel free to do so. I talk more of myself, Sheena, than you in terms of dulcet tones. But it's been great having you with us. I really do appreciate you giving up your lunch. I hope it's going to be a great week for you, Sheena, in your organization and for all our listeners. But for now, I just want to say thank you again to Sheena for joining us. Really, really appreciate you giving up your time. And we look forward, Sheena, to welcoming you back again, maybe in a couple of months' time, for a bit of an update on where you've got to and how we can continue to move our businesses forward and continue to grow them, have that growth mindset of how we can build our businesses, not just for today, not just for next week, but for 5 years, for 10 years into the future, and have that real positive challenge of taking our businesses forward. But thank you, Sheena, for now. Stay well, stay safe, everybody, and we look forward to another Lunch and Learn next week. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. Thanks.
You're
Bye.
welcome.